lot of times we're talking about curiosity and behaviors, but we're not actually really talking about our full selves and what it means to be grounded in our full selves and embodying all of our experiences, our emotions, and learning from those and bringing them to life. So what's brought us to here today isn't necessarily what's going to get us there, and Jay Fields is going to tell us more about that. Please welcome to the stage, Jay.
Listen to me now.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. And good to see you all. Wow, there's a lot of you. Hello, hello. Let me see if I can get where I'm. Okay, how's it going? I can kind of see you. So I want to start by sharing with you one of my favorite quotes. It's from the mythologist Joseph Campbell. And it goes like this. He says, "People say that what we're seeking is a meaning for life. I don't think that's what we're really seeking. I think what we're seeking is an experience of being alive, so that our life experiences on the purely physical plane will have resonances with our own innermost being and reality." I love that quote, and it feels true to me, which is why today I am not going to be sharing with you the meaning for life, because who needs that, right? I want to share with you a little bit more about this business of being alive and feeling our own experience of being alive. So with that, I'm going to ask you, or give you, the opportunity to take your attention off of me and off of the stage and look around the space we're in. Maybe even if you could turn the lights off, that would be awesome. So look around the space we're in, actually turn your head, look at the structures, the lights, the different colors, and maybe even play a little game where you try and identify 3 things you can see that are blue. And while you're looking around, I want you to see if you can have the experience of being the one behind your own eyes doing the looking. Like you are in a body, in this room, in a chair, and you might even feel your back and the backs of your legs, right? Where they're in the chair, you feel that? You might notice that you're breathing or not. Okay, so now you can stop looking around if you're doing that and just let your eyes rest anywhere in particular. And I want you to start wiggling your toes. Yes, and it's this, they are down there. This is a thing. Every time I say wiggle your toes, people look down. So I want you to see if you can wiggle your toes and know that you're doing that without having to look at them. And you might feel there's socks touching your toes or there's shoes touching your toes. But notice what part of your attention you turn on to look at me, but also know you're wiggling your toes. You got that? Okay. So now you can stop wiggling your toes, and I'd like you to place your hand on your chest and feel the place where your hand meets your chest. So you might do a little rub or a little tap, and see if this is pleasant for you or annoying, because I know I'm losing some of you out there with this, or you just don't feel anything at all. That's fine. Whatever your experience is okay. I'm wanting you to see if you can just have some curiosity, that's the word of the day, and feel this meeting place, okay? So there's one last piece, and I want you to try this one with your eyes open, because it's tempting to close your eyes. I'm going to bring to mind someone or something or some place that genuinely makes you smile. You don't have to have your hand there if you don't want to. But you'll know you'll found the thing that makes you smile if you get a little spontaneous curl. There's one. There's one there. So when you have the thing that makes you smile, I want you to see if you can feel what that feels like from here down. When you think of that person, place, or thing that makes you smile, does it feel warm? Does it feel light? Does it feel energetic? Does it feel quiet? Whatever that feeling is, see if you can tune into it for just a little bit longer, because this is the experience of you smiling. This is the experience of your own joy. Like, that's pretty good stuff, right? Okay, so when you're ready, trying to keep as much connection to your own felt sense of yourself as you can. When you bring your attention back up here, if you've been looking elsewhere, good to be with you. Because it feels different now, right? Like, do you feel more here in your body, in your chair? I do. Side note, I do this sometimes just for me, so I can be a little more present in my body when I'm up here. So thank you for going along with that with me. Because the thing is, if what we're really seeking is an experience of being alive, we don't get that very much because we are so up here, so focused out here or here, that we're not feeling our own experience. And look, this is in part because many of us live and work in cultures where there is a big bias towards thinking and doing and not feeling and being. And all of our brains have a bias towards taking in information, what's going on out here, faster and louder than we take in information about what's going on in here. So it takes practice to be able to tune into your own inner experience. And most of us haven't been taught how to practice this in a way that's accessible in real time. And we haven't been taught why it's so important that we know how to do this. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. And the word for what we're talking about is called embodiment. And quite simply, embodiment is you experiencing yourself and the world around you. And that is different than you thinking about yourself and the world around you. In fact, research in neurobiology tells us that experiencing lights up different parts of your brain than thinking does. When you're in your body, you have more access to qualities like courage, compassion, empathy, intuition, and emotional regulation. And I think you could probably agree with me that these inner resources might come in pretty handy in pretty much any situation you find yourself in personally and professionally, right? Okay, so then really take this next part in. You don't get more access to these qualities by being smart and by thinking. You get access to them by being in your body and experiencing. So how do you do that? Well, you pay attention to the sort of information that you get in the present moment from your 5 senses. But you also look for things of your own experience, like right now. Are you warm or are you cool? Do you feel tight or do you feel light and open? Maybe are your hands as sweaty as mine are right now? Probably not. I think mine are probably the sweatiest in this room. But in terms of energy level, are you wired or are you worn out? And what does the sensation that you feel in your body right now tell you about the mood that you're in? Let's see. The rub with this kind of information is that when you start to pay attention to this stuff, you often get information back that is uncomfortable or unpleasant, right? So you pay attention to your body and you notice you're stressed out, you're tense, you have a headache, and you don't like how tight your pants feel. Any one of those things start happening and you immediately go back up into your head because it's easier and more comfortable to be out there. So that's where felt resources come in. A felt resource is something that you choose to do with your body in the present moment that feels either pleasant or neutral. It is what I was encouraging you to do in the beginning, if you didn't know this. So anytime you find yourself at your computer kind of like locked up on it and you're like, taking your eyes off the screen and looking around the room helps to orient you and get out of that tunnel vision. And adding the thing where you look for 3 or 5 things that are blue or green helps you to really engage your mind and change your mindset. Wiggling your toes. This is something you can do when you're having a difficult conversation. If you're wearing shoes, nobody knows you're doing this. And even if you are, they probably won't see it. I didn't have you rub your fingers, but this is a really simple one. I use this on Zoom calls a lot. Like when I'm tense and I don't know what's gonna be happening, I get nervous. I just have my hand underneath me and I'm rubbing my fingers, and there's a part of me that knows that I'm doing this. Or you could put your hand on your chest anytime you want to give yourself the message, I'm here, I got you. Because that's what this feels like to me. These things may seem trivial or weird, but there is a reason why we do them. And that is, they give you a layer of your experience that is either pleasant or neutral, so that you can stay in your body when everything else you feel is uncomfortable or unpleasant. And that's a good thing because it means you're more likely to stay. And when you stay, you get access to these inner resources, remember? And this is humans at our best. We don't get this from being in our heads. Felt resources are also important because they help you to not succumb to your fight, flight, freeze response in your nervous system. Because anytime you've known better but didn't do better in a situation, it's probably thanks to your nervous system. Because it is wired for survival. And it is constantly scanning your outsides and your insides for signs of danger or threat. And whether it's accurate or not in its assessment, if your nervous system senses danger or threat, it will put you automatically into fight, flight, freeze. And in our present day life, that usually looks like some kind of strategy that we employ to try to feel good inside. Because we humans most want to feel things like love and connection and safety and belonging. And if we don't know how to get to those experiences with methods that feel good, we will get to them with methods that feel not so good, like strategies. In fact, and this is important, much of what we think of as our personality is a combination of the influence of the state that our nervous system is in, mixed with the strategy that we're doing to try to feel better inside. So what does this look like in real life? I'll give you a little window into my life and see if any of this resonates with you. In my 20s, I was busy making a total mess of my life by either taking care of other people at my expense or taking care of myself at the expense of the people I loved. Because I had gotten a lot of conditioning growing up that to be a good person meant to never make someone else uncomfortable. And that is a tricky way to navigate this world. Because anytime I felt like I wanted to say no or set a boundary with someone, my brain would say, Jay, you can't do that. That's gonna make that person uncomfortable. And if I was in that situation trying to set the boundary, my chest would lock up, my throat would tighten, and I would feel like I literally might die if I set a boundary. Has anyone else ever been there? Yes, right? So in that moment, no amount of knowing why it's healthy or good for me to set the boundary was gonna be enough for me to overcome that freeze response. So naturally, I became a people pleaser because I didn't know how to get by this freeze response other than saying, sure, I'll do it. In my 20s, I also was scared a lot of the time. I was scared that people weren't gonna like me. I was scared I wasn't gonna be able to make a living. I was scared that I was gonna be alone for the rest of my life. And all of that fear felt like this kind of sped up feeling inside. I'd call that a flight response. And the way I managed that was to put on this tough girl exterior. And tough girl was smart, she had the answer, and she was funny, and she was sarcastic, and she could do anything. And it was kind of this ploy to say like, pay no attention to all this mushy feeling stuff that I have going on. Look how shiny I am. That way, not only did you not see my mushy insides, I didn't feel them either. But as you might imagine, all that people-pleasing and all that shiny, tough girl performance was exhausting. So sometimes my nervous system went into what's called the immobilization response. Think of that as like a turtle in a shell. It's when the world has become too much, you're over it, you just want to withdraw and disconnect. So I went into this so much that when I was about 25, I lived for a year by myself, off the grid, in a yurt, where I didn't have running drinking water, I had no refrigerator, and perhaps most questionable of all, my toilet was an actual bucket, you guys. Yeah, and I was willing to deal with all of that so that I could be alone and not have to deal with other people. Because I did not know how to have a good experience of myself when I was close to another human being. Is this resonating with any of you? Maybe not the bucket part, but that's pretty rare. But anyone else resonate with this? Yeah. So my question for you is, do you think it's true that I was a people-pleasing, tough girl, loner yurt girl? That was my personality. Or do you think it's true that I didn't have the skills to manage my emotions and regulate my nervous system in the ordinary but difficult moments of my life. I choose B from everything I know now. And I'm hoping that right now you're starting to question some of your behaviors that you don't really like how they feel when you're doing them, but you think of them as who you are and what your personality is. Because not only are your strategies not who you are, your strategies are also not you relating. They're strategizing. They're disembodied. When we're doing any one of the strategies we do, we are disconnected from ourselves, and we are seeking some kind of external solution to how we feel inside. So let me give you a hypothetical situation. Let's say you're in a romantic partnership, and your partner, without asking you, invites their mom to come live with you for 6 months. Feel that? So let's say you get that information and a fireball ignites in your chest. And before you know it, you become the fire-breathing dragon version of yourself that is yelling at your partner and calling them choice names. I'm not saying that any of you would do this. This is hypothetical. But what would happen if you stayed in your body and you related? So you get the information, fireball is still there. But this time you feel it happen. And you think to yourself, that is a fight response from my nervous system. And no words that come out of my mouth in this situation are gonna make it any better. So first, I need to do something to regulate my nervous system. And one of my favorite things to do is to feel my feet on the ground. So what's true now is that I have a fireball in my chest and I wanna scream at my partner, but it's also true that I can feel my feet on the ground. And this feels like support. And that support gets translated to my nervous system and it reads it as not fight. So there's the layer of my experience that is okay, while there's also this layer of my experience that's like, we're gonna go, we're gonna have a fight. And that layer of my experience makes it possible for me to stay present and have access to those inner resources where I can also regulate my emotions and find that actually I'm not mad, I'm hurt. Because my partner didn't ask me first. So now I can say to my partner, hey babe, you know, when you didn't ask me, I didn't feel considered. And that hurt. And as you might imagine, that starts an entirely different kind of conversation than calling them a name. Staying in your body makes it possible for you to stay with your own experience in real time or close to real time, so you can share your experience in a way that is accurate and disarming, and not distorted and destructive. And that makes it possible to have a good experience of yourself. And that really should matter. In fact, in Joseph Campbell's world, maybe this is one of the things that matters most to us. Having a good experience is worth looking for, but it is a multi-layered process to be able to get there. First, it takes being able to be in your body so you can feel what's happening and choose to regulate your nervous system. Once you're there, it takes being able to reframe some of the ways that you think about emotions and what it means to be a good person. Because a lot of us got handed down from the people who love us and want the best for us, a lot of blueprints for relating that don't actually help us relate in healthy ways, because those people also only knew how to do strategies. So we come into our adult lives with things like believing that vulnerability is bad, or that my experience doesn't get to matter if your experience is different, or that emotion I feel doesn't get to be valid unless you think it's valid. So once you've been able to regulate your nervous system in a certain situation, and you have access to those inner resources like compassion and intuition and emotional regulation, you can work with some of these old stories in your mind that don't build healthy relationships. And you can get to the place where you can say something to your partner or your business partner or your client that's actually relational. Because most of us have been speaking the language of strategy our whole life, not the language of relating. And it sounds different, right? It sounds different to say, you're a jerk, than it does to say, I didn't feel considered. Or it sounds different to say, yeah, sure, that would be great if she stays here for 6 months, than it does to say, hey, this is hard for me to say because I don't want to disappoint you, but I don't know if I can do that. Can we talk about this? Right? These skill sets together make up the method that I developed since being reclusive yurt girl, when I came back into civilization and learned how to actually relate with people. And I call it relational rewire. It's the answer to the question of, yeah, but how do you actually get out of your head and have a good experience of yourself? And it's what I do with people all over the world to help them create a relationship with themselves that's trustworthy. Rather than being able to unpack the whole process today, though, I just wanted to give you a little peek at it and come back to the one thing that I think is most important and that I would love for you to take away today, and that is embodiment. Being able to experience yourself from here down is the primary skill that underlies everything you need to know how to do in order to actually relate. Because relating is inherently embodied, and hardly any of us are doing it that way. Because we are so in our heads, and we are so in our strategies, and we're thinking we're relating, and then we wonder why our relationships don't feel good. Speaking of being embodied, you still have a body. It is in this room with you. It is holding your head up right now. And this might be a great opportunity for you to come back to doing something for you to feel it. You could cross your legs the other way. You could rub your fingers together. You could sit up a little taller. Like, feel yourself in this space, taking up space. You taking up space takes from no one else in this space. This is important, this ability to feel yourself in your body, because your intelligence and your strategies might get you far when it comes to success and achievement. But I promise you that your strategies over time will also get you far away from yourself and far away from the people and the causes you care about. There's a reason why we have an epidemic of loneliness and social anxiety and a general lack of fulfillment in lives that from the outside looking in seem great, because we don't know how to be in our bodies in a way where we feel resourced and we can connect and contribute in meaningful ways. So the stake in the ground I'm making today is this. I don't think this moment in history needs more brilliant minds. I think it needs more embodied people who know how to actually relate. So practice being embodied with your eyes open in real time around other people. Find the felt resources that work for you to interrupt your strategies so that you can relate in a way where what's true for you in your own innermost being in reality matches what you say and do on the outside. Because that is the North Star of the life that you're seeking. And I want that for you. I want that for us. So stay with yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. And again, we're going to have some people going up and down the alley so they can ask you questions. What an amazing talk. And I know I'm personally taking quite a bit away from it and still have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about embodiment, the first thing that comes to mind for me is, how do I even know what my emotions are? At least for me personally, I can share that I can understand sadness, happiness, anger.
Yeah.
But how do we get more in touch with our emotions to explore like the hundreds of emotions that exist to really know what's happening within us?
That is a good question, because there's like the 7 emotions that everybody seems to know, but then there's all the nuanced ones. And I think it starts with just actually asking yourself the question, what am I feeling right now? Because we don't usually ask ourselves that question. So we just stay with the few things that we think we're feeling. But I find that with my clients, what they really love is you can go on the internet and you can download lists of emotions, and to have them printed out somewhere where you would, on a daily basis, kind of check in with yourself and ask yourself, and then look at it so that you can look down and find some of the ones that are more nuanced, like I'm feeling distracted or I'm feeling disappointed, and actually give yourself the language for it, because like anything else, if you don't have the language to express it, it doesn't exist. So finding some of those online resources that give you lists of all the emotions and starting there.
That's a great suggestion. And any suggestions on what to do when you first notice an emotion? Because again, I'm just going to use my personal experience of sometimes there's something I think I'm experiencing, but actually when I start to look at it, it might be something very different.
So can you say that again?
So just as an example,
yeah.
Sometimes I think I'm angry.
Yeah.
I'm actually not angry. I might be frustrated, or if I even go a little bit deeper, it's I have an unmet need. Is there anything, tips that you use around trying to understand what's actually really happening?
Yeah. So if you're someone who tends to feel anger easily, I would say always ask yourself the question, what else might be happening? Because anger is often not a primary emotion. It's hiding something that's more mushy, more vulnerable. If you're someone who never feels angry, you might ask yourself when you feel sad, is there anything about what I'm feeling right now that might actually be anger? So the ones that you kind of like reside in, and they're your comfy ones, like I'm good with sadness, but I'm awful with fear. Like I can't detect fear for a long time until I'm just like totally numb and I've watched 4 hours of Netflix and I want to eat popcorn for dinner. And then I'm like, oh, I think I'm scared. So I guess my answer would be to be suspect.
I like that, to get really curious with yourself. And so one of the things that you talked about, and I just want to do a quick scan. Is there any questions? Oh, we've got a question over here. Perfect. We've got two. The gentleman over there, and then we're going to move to the gentleman behind him.
Not working? Yeah. Thank you. Great talk. I have 2 questions actually. The first one is personal for you, like how often on average during the day, during the week, do you like small embodiment practices?
All the time. If any of you saw me over there before my talk, I was doing, and I was like doing a little shaking. Shaking's one of my favorite things. I drink a lot of water when I sit at my desk, so one of my tricks is that every time I have to get up and go pee, which is like every hour, that I do something. So for me, I like to shake, like I said, or orienting, that thing. Did anyone find looking around the room was like, it became like you felt yourself? I'll do that a lot because I look at a computer a lot, so I'll just look around my room and be like, oh yeah, I love that picture on the wall. I put that there for a reason. So I do it all the time, and I think what I love about embodiment as opposed to mindfulness is we tend to think of mindfulness as something we have to do for like 20 minutes, and we sit alone and our eyes are closed and it's silent, but embodiment takes 5 seconds. Like right now, you could feel your butt in the chair, and it's there, and you're here, and then you move on. So I do it all the time.
So I have a question for you just on the embodiment piece before we go to the other gentleman. Because you've talked about emotions, you've also talked about embodiment, but there's times where you might be picking up other people's emotions or feelings.
Yeah.
So how can you stay embodied with other people?
Right? That's kind of the thing. That's the Jedi move.
I love it, the Jedi move.
There's this thing called peripersonal space. And peripersonal space is where you can reach to. So above you, out behind you. And what I do when I'm around other people is I feel where my peripersonal space is, and I know that that is mine, and that whatever is out here only comes in if I let it come in. So I think of it as like having a gate out there, and if you're all like, rah, and crazy wild, like really wired, I might be like, no, that's not coming in. If you're warm and open, I might be like, oh yeah, that can come in. And to get a sense of your experience is not my experience. There are 2 different realities up here. And I think that's the thing that one of our conditioning, for how we're raised, we often get this unspoken conditioning that if there's 2 people in a space, there's one reality, and we're sharing it. And whoever has more status or more power gets to have the reality. but we each get to have our own, and this is mine, and that's yours.
I love it.
You do you.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Over to the gentleman there, and then we might be able to sneak in one more question just for you.
Is it okay to ask my second question very quickly?
I'm going to suggest that maybe you could find Jay afterwards, if that's okay, because we've got. Is that okay with you?
Okay. Works.
Perfect. Thank you. Just to allow some other voices as well.
This is a question I face a lot in my life, and I'm not sure if it's relevant to the talk. We hear in theory that when you're angry, you need to make some space between the stimulus and the response, and then you can control your actions. But in reality, it's the actions even before you can think. Like, how do I create that gap? Like, and you know how it goes. When you're angry and blurting out at your partner and someone else.
Yeah.
How do, in practice, do you create that space between the stimulus and your actions, mostly negative actions?
Right. Good question. I find that with anger, it's one of those emotions that's got a lot of energy and a lot of heat. And we don't like being uncomfortable, right? Energy and heat is uncomfortable, so we tend to want to dispel it. And so what I work with my clients is about, how a light bulb has a wattage? So let's say your typical wattage is 60 watts, but when you get angry, it's 120 watts. So part of these embodiment practices are increasing your wattage so that you can have more energy move through your system and it doesn't blow your circuitry. Because the blowing your circuitry, when all of a sudden the fireball ignites and you're angry, and you have to do something to dispel that energy. But if you know through these embodiment practices how to stay in your body and have more discomfort while also having some layer of your experience that's grounding, that's how you create the space between the stimulus and the response. Because the discomfort won't just go away. You have to work with it actively to make it go away. Does that help?
Kind of, yeah. Thank you.
We've got time for one more quick question.
Hi, I use breath work for grounding myself and handle my emotions. And my question is, do you use breath work or your breath? And what is your favorite technique?
So she asked if I use breath work. And I don't so much use breath work. It's not easy for me. In the felt resources that I listed, you might have noticed that breathing was not one of them. Because for many people, when you're really in a fight, flight, freeze response, you can't get to deep breathing. And so it actually freaks people out that I'm supposed to be able to take 5 deep breaths and I can't. So man, I must be really effed right now, right? So it can kind of add to it. So the felt resources are designed to get you back to a place where you can breathe. If breathing works for you, or any of you, keep doing it. But if it doesn't, know that it's not considered a felt resource. But for me, when I do, I love the 5 and 5. Just super simple. Find a balanced breath. Yeah. Thank you for asking that. It's good.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jay.